Thank you, Trish, and good morning, everyone. Hopefully, everyone's fresh. It's 11 o'clock. It isn't fresh and early, but after the pub crawl and everything else, 11 o'clock seems early as well. So, welcome. And my name is Mcmaster, as Trish said. I run the IoT product management organization at Verizon. And I'm sure when you walked in, this Edge session wasn't the first Edge session in your mind. I'm sure you've been to several other Edge sessions, but what we'd like to focus on, for the perspective of this audience here, is what's Verizon and specifically other carriers doing to facilitate your applications to be running off of the cloud and into the edge, and what are we doing to align that to our deployment of the 5G networks. And towards the end, we'll tell you what's here and now. We'll actually show you a device where we've gone out and implemented zero-touch onboarding into Amazon, into AWS, and that lets developers such as yourselves kind of power on with zero-touch onboarding, get started on your IoT project right away. So let's get started. So no discussion on Edge can actually begin without kind of quantifying how big and the massiveness of this IoT market, right? So we're talking, if you calibrate down to 2020, what does that mean? We're talking about 24.4 billion connected objects. And at the same period in time, the population of this world is going to be right around 8.5 to 9 billion. So what we're talking about is about 2.5 smart objects to every single human being, which means that people have to get in now and build for IoT. Same time frame. 2/3 of all enterprises will have an IoT solution. What does that mean? It could be for strategic reasons. It could be for pure customer experience, like the ones you've seen on this floor. It could also be for a pure operational reason, right? So it's really the combination of what we call IT and operations technology combined. 2/3 of enterprises will have gone out and deployed and worked on an IoT solution of some sort. Okay, I'm not even going to touch the third one. I mean, you've gone at lengths around this floor. Everyone's moving to the cloud. That's great. I'm not going to touch on the 78%. But the 3/4 number, which is the fourth number, is an important one, because 3/4 of connected cars will have the ability by 2020 to talk to the internet. And I want to be cautious. I'm not saying all of these are going to be cellular connected cars, but these cars will have a means of sending telemetry data or their application data into the cloud via connected means. Really, really an important set of statistics, tells you the massiveness of the market, tells you why you should be playing in it, tells you why we as carriers are so interested in making this real for you. And that's a segue into what are carriers doing. I mean, what can carriers do to kind of help you with that journey, both on the endpoint and the edge? So let's go from left to right. So first, we understand that the IoT business isn't really the smartphones and the tablets business, right? It's a completely different set of characters that are coming in. It's the sensor makers, it's the gateway makers, it's people that are not seasoned to go out and build devices. So we've gone out and done a whole bunch of partnerships. So the first thing you should know about is that in order to facilitate IoT, carriers have gone out and struck partnerships to enable low throughput, or what we call low-powered WAN networks. The first one being Cat-M1. We're nationwide with the Cat-M1 network. The next network we're investing in heavily is Narrowband Iot that we're going to be public with. So when you have that sensor that's semi-static, you have a Narrowband Iot, which is a lower throughput network to play with. And obviously, we're headed towards the path to 5G. We've already announced that there's going to be 6 cities with 5G, which means we're going to enable what we call massive IoT on the 5G network, right? I'm going to spend little time on the broad coverage because, key to you being successful is that we need to have ubiquitous coverage with cellular networks across the country and worldwide, for that matter. Let's spend a little bit of time on the third point, which is what's happening to the network to help you with edge. So what's happening with 5G is something really important, which is we're taking our core network elements, which in the 4G world used to be situated really far away from your sensor, into what we call the network core. and we're moving it really, really, really close to where your sensors and your devices are. So, think about what we call the multi-access edge compute model, moving off of your core and getting very close to your premise, right? A whole new set of use cases open up as a result of this, because now, we've facilitated a model where you don't have to go out and do your own hardware. You don't have to go out and architect your own edge. The carrier is going to facilitate the edge for you, sitting very, very close to your premise. That's a huge deal, because now you're actually portable with your applications, utilizing the carrier's network to be able to proliferate these, right? And then, obviously the security element. Why is that important? Because a lot of us have been in the device developer space. What happens when you try to build a device? The first thing you compromise on is, let's go through some of these hurdles, let's skip some. What do you skip? Security. And the big element in trying to put a device on the edge into the cellular network, the thing you gain is that day one, you're end-to-end secure. So there's 4 elements that kind of come together, right? You've got the new category of chipsets. You've got multi-access edge compute, which means the network alone is bringing the edge closer to your device with 5G, and there's end-to-end security as a result. Let's keep going. So, what's the impact of the cellular edge compute, right? I mean, the way I like to think about it is you got to remember the 3 C's. The first C is compute, the second C is connect, the third C is control. So if you go from the top to bottom, I mean, what we're doing with edge, like in any other edge, is now with the 5G network, you can take a lot of your processing, such as computer vision and things like that, and you're moving it off of your sensor into, sort of the multi-access edge that we're going to support as part of our 5G network. And then, as a result of which, what helps you and helps us at the same time is that because a lot of the processing is now moved so close to the premise, that we are actually optimizing the amount of backhaul to the cloud, which is great, right? Because it helps us from an optimization standpoint. It helps you with the amount of data that you're having to haul all the way back to the cloud and back. All right? And then the byproduct of all this is, and this is going to sound great to a lot of the device maker friends, is going to be that because you've transferred all that compute requirement out to the edge, we can finally see sensors that are coming down, cellular sensors for that matter, that'll come down to much, much lower cost. Because you can actually transfer a lot of that sophistication from the sensor over to the edge, which means that the 3 C's of 5G become very, very real. Again, to remember, it's compute, connect, and control. And then, the intelligent edge that I talked about, we look at 3 very core applications of it, all right? The first one is what we see in the traffic and the public safety space. I've been to a whole bunch of sessions here that talk about how we're going to improve through machine learning and computer vision the ability to go out and do traffic and public safety. And imagine a car moving through, we detect an object and we get things like Vision Zero going. So for people that have actually visited our booth, we have a full demonstration of what we're doing in the smart city space, where we can actually detect pedestrian movement, car movement, and report out to the city almost immediately because of our edge capabilities and our 5G. Huge application of what we're doing with edge compute. The second one is going to be the piece that we've been waiting on, which is autonomous vehicles. AV needs 5G. I mean, we saw this article in Forbes a while ago. It's music to our ears, because until you have the low latency of 5G, which is sub 5 milliseconds at this point, which is almost unperceived, you do not have autonomous vehicle. We believe autonomous vehicle is going to be a massive, massive, enabler. In other words, 5G is going to be this massive enabler for AV. And then on the industrial side, on the manufacturing side, edge compute from cellular is going to open up, a whole bunch of new possibilities, right? Because if you look at the manufacturing space right now, you have a lot of legacy equipment. You've got the SCADA equipment, you've got a lot of Modbus protocol equipment, and these things have an opportunity now to move from their legacy, infrastructure over to new infrastructure. But think about what just happened. Now, because of the cellular network providing the edge on-premise, enterprises can, and especially in the manufacturing and the retail verticals, can actually start talking about running core compute applications on the cellular network And what's really important about this is that you can go out and run your Lambda functions, or you can actually go out and push your models down to the edge. But when you move from the one factory setting to a second factory setting, and both of these are located in two different parts of the country, both of them supported by the carrier's edge, your logic and your rules and your policies, they just immediately poured out without you having to go out and deploy. That's the magic of this, right? So you can immediately have a fully portable setting of your mobile edge compute supported by the carrier that goes from one part of the country to the next part of the country. So we believe these are very, very core applications that we'll be focused on, at least from a 5G perspective. And as I talked about, the network is the edge. And what's important here is this is not us relying on the enterprise to go out and put new hardware in place, have different hardware relationships in place just to enable compute. We're going to have the combination of devices. I talked about how CADM and narrowband are going to become real, how they allow for reduced network consumption, how they allow for really, really long battery life. And then on the 5G side, the big thing that gets enabled in that same setting is going to be how do you offload your compute, right? So the big thing to think about is that that's what's happening in the device. Network on the CADM narrowband side, if you're building that sensor, if you've got that perfect use case for the sensor, the CADM network's ready, the narrowband network's coming, and that's how you should be thinking about how you enable CADM and narrowband. When you start thinking about building that gateway, we will have mobile edge compute, supporting your core applications, right? And then, there's new applications. For example, one of the ones that we hear from customers all the time is how do you do localized threat detection? So if you've got edge on premise, and if you've got sensors that are vulnerable, how do you create quarantining? So when you detect that you've got an anomalous behavior with a set of sensors that are localized, you can have quarantining policies on the edge that prevent any of the threat malware to kind of proliferate into your cloud and wider. Security is going to be a big, big element in what we support on mobile edge compute. And keep moving. This is almost like a brag sheet for us, right? To say that we're obviously we're deployed nationwide. We're going to be supporting about between 170 to 200 countries globally. You can put one SIM in there, support your devices nationwide. Quality of service, big one. The one thing that gets enabled with Edge is that a gaming developer or VR developer can actually come out and say that I need the ability to do network slicing. In other words, between 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., I'd like to give my customers the ability to get prioritized bandwidth and prioritized traffic. And by setting that up, you get access to network slicing, which means that your applications run faster. I'm going to touch on another one. So for example, if you think about how you do tools with the applications in your business environment, right? You go out and set up Lambda functions on AWS. We talked about how these can be cached on Greengrass and things like that. And these can start running on your MEC network and perform the same functions that any other hardware would. And security, as we talked about, is a big element in all this. Just to summarize then, we're there in terms of providing the reliable connectivity. We're there with empowering our partners, such as yourself, providing you access to the network, the chipset, and then security becomes a massive, massive function as a result of this. All right? But we talked about edge. And what I want to cover, though, is something really critical, which is what's here and what's now, and what did we do with AWS to enable the development community right away. So here's something that we put in place, and when we start talking about edge and when we start talking about applications, when we walked around and talked to developers and customers, the one thing that we heard on a regular basis is, cellular sounds great. Can you tell me some way to go out and test whether my use case works reliably on cellular, right? Which means that they had to go out and invest engineering resources. They had to go and find out the right module makers. They had to find out what the right price plan was, how to set up the device and so on. So we said, let's make it very, very simple. So regardless of use case, we pulled together, what we call, this is our cloud sensor hub. We pulled this together and we said, if you've got a use case today, take our sensor hub, that's completely integrated with AWS now. So, it's our sensor hub that's powered by the CADM network. It's got an integrated SIM. It's got the right security certificate on there. It's got power on activation. And it's integrated directly with AWS. So if your application is running on AWS, and if you have a use case to go out and test for whether cellular works for you or not, literally take this device from us, put this in the setting where you want to test out your use case, and with zero engineering effort, you're going to be able to know if the use case in cellular works for you. That's the piece we've worked very, very closely with AWS on. It's our cloud multi-sensor. And we've actually worked with some very close partners to actually go out and take their individual use cases, take the data from our sensors, and build out dashboards and things like that. The big element here is, there were a lot of hurdles when it came down to building cellular. We're trying to bridge that gap, and we're here to kind of give you the ability where you say that if you wanted to build out something very, very quickly with minimum engineering effort, integrated with AWS, the cloud multi-sensor is here for you to go out and take it for a test drive, put it on your use case, see how cellular works for you. All right. And here are some examples. So, for example, we picked one of our partners that actually worked in the food safety space, and within minutes they were able to go and take this device, wire it up to their use cases, configure all the sensors, to actually pull that data. So now you could go out and deploy this device in a condition-based monitoring setting. You could go out and deploy this device in some sort of a retail setting. Instantaneously, you would know, based on your use case and the number of pings and the quality of the network, how would cellular work for you? Zero engineering effort, just take it. And once you move from then on to building a dev kit, we have a dev kit that's integrated with Amazon RTOS as well. All right. So so those are two examples. And with that, what I want to do is, I want to end with a video that we want to show, for that sort of describes this. Let me. Well, we're here. We're here to help you through your IoT journey, both on the edge side as well as the endpoint side. So come see us. We're down the hallway at our booth. Give us your names, and we'll be happy to help you through that IoT journey for you. Thank you again for coming.